Welcome to this week's astrology. And this is a week where we're still in the energy of conflict. And things can almost reach a standstill this week, particularly if you felt like there's frustration, there's anger, and that can be an internal anger. Like, I don't know how to move forward. I don't know what I'm meant to do in my life. I don't know why I'm here or what my purpose is. And then at a larger collective level, that kind of frustration around like, this is mine. Um, the kind of the I, me, mine, the ego taking over and wanting to possess. And there can be a standstill that happens this week because this energy is really about Mars and Pluto and these two going back and forward. And so, because Pluto is going to station retrograde on Monday, tomorrow, his energy will be stationary, which actually makes his energy stronger. Added to that, because the sun is in a nakshatra called Bharani, which is ruled by Yama, and who is the god of rebirth and death and the underworld, a lot like Pluto. This can be a really big energy. We can already feel it now, but Pluto will fully slow down on Monday. And the sun is kind of like nodding towards that energy. And as the god of the underworld, as it's stationary, it becomes the strongest energy in the sky. Pluto is the energy of alchemy, the energy of transformation, the desire to transmute frustration, anger into gold. The way I often think about Pluto as like this god of the underworld, he's like the ruler of our shadow, ruler of the part of ourselves that we project onto the world around us, and we rarely take the time to own within us. It's the stuff where it's like the perfect person that knows exactly what to say to trigger you. That's the shadow. And that's kind of like the energy that Pluto mines. It's the stuff we want to own within ourselves, but we just can't. Anyway, Pluto is this lord of the underworld. Like when we think of the underworld, like it's dark, it's even maybe a bit scary, it's full of our fears. It requires isolating ourselves from other people. But here's the thing with the underworld, it's the place where we come to know who we are. It's the place where there's gold, where there's diamonds, where there's the inner treasure. But we have to go through the fear, the anxiety, the apprehension, the being unsure. In order to find that, we have to face the part of ourselves we haven't fully owned and loved. And so you can find that that's a really big energy already, but really peaking this week. And what it's trying to do is find resolution. Mars and Pluto, as they've been going back and forward, and I spoke about this in last week's video, we really felt them in November last year. We then felt them again in the beginning of January, and we felt them on Sunday, like last Sunday. But this is going to kind of, it forces us to face the way we block ourselves, to get really comfortable with even the idea that you might not need to know what you're doing or where you're going. And even looking at the places where you might sabotage your own direction out of fear, out of the fear of actually doing something for yourself, out of the fear of taking yourself even out of the system and into something new. So just be aware. I think collectively we're going to feel a lot, because when we look historically at when Pluto has opposed Mars or even been conjunct Mars and been stationary, there's been a lot of conflicting energy. It's almost like things do hit ahead, and it's necessary for us to move forward, for us to face that inner dissonance and the external dissonance. Now, where I feel like that will be focused for us this week, three areas of our lives. The first is around what we protect. I would be saying like the beginning of the week can have a big theme around home, family, where we live. And so you might find that tension and energy manifest with neighbors, with people that you live with. Even if you're moving homes, it can have to do with energy around that. There's some thing that wants to come to the surface. And ultimately, that is really about the relationship, like how we protect what we think is ours versus someone else's. And I feel like in terms of the collective, we're really going to see that in terms of countries, because the whole idea of a country is, well, it's not real, right? It's a concept. It's almost like a collective psychosis. We've all agreed that a certain country exists, therefore it does. We've all agreed a certain country doesn't exist, so therefore it doesn't. But countries are like egos. They work off this idea of what belongs and what doesn't belong. And so we can find that there's this really big energy that comes up at the beginning of the week, particularly to kind of Wednesday, and then it will start to shift. From Wednesday, we can find that that tension then becomes about children. Collectively, there will be a big focus on children, but within you, you can find that it also shows up as the ways in which you don't express yourself, the ways in which you're so caught up, maybe in like the rat race or in like what you think you need to achieve in life, that you're actually not taking time to play, to romance, to have fun, to enjoy life, to create. And this can become a really big point of tension again, that the mind will bring up stories, and stories also about your childhood. So like it can go all the way back to like how this conflict is actually coming from something in your childhood that's wanting to be understood and revealed. We're then going to finish the week with that conflict really being around our daily life, our health, our routine. And so I'd be saying towards the end of this week, if you're already feeling like your health's a little bit iffy, like something's like not quite right in the body, or like mentally things are feeling a little bit unstable, do the best that you can at the beginning of the week, just to give yourself what you need, to give yourself that medicine. Because towards the end of the week, you can find that the body wants to show you what it's holding, because the body always keeps score, doesn't it? It wants to show you where that tension is, and it will like physically show where that conflict and tension is. So just be prepared to see, and it will also show you as well where you might be overextending yourself, almost like making yourself uh going above and beyond to the point where you're actually kind of burning yourself out. Yeah, so just being really careful with our own energy. So that's the energy around Pluto and Mars. Just be, just know we're kind of at the back end of this conflicting energy. It's going to be in the collective, it will be in the personal energy as well. Now, on top of that, what else is going on this week? So, Parvati, the asteroid, enters Taurus today, and she'll be there till the 9th of July. And Parvati is all about devotion. She's a beautiful balancing energy to that Mars, Pluto. And Parvati is almost this thing of like, cool, yes, there's a lot going on in the material realm, um, in the physical realm, in the matrix, so to speak. And she's almost this remembering, like, don't forget it's all God. Even the stuff, even the shadow, the divine, it's still the divine. It's nothing is separate from the divine. And when we separate something from the divine, we separate ourselves. It's not that something that gets separated, because that is us. So just remember that. On Monday, Hygiea, another asteroid, is going to join Parvati and Taurus. And so there can be this, just at a personal note, she'll be there until the 9th of August. It can be a really great time to get ahead in matters of like finance, money, issues around possessions and property, just getting ahead of things, being really proactive in any action you might be taking around that. And Ceres, another asteroid, will be conjunct the North Node, which is really beautiful and incredibly creative, right at the same time that Pluto is going to be stationary, but incredibly creative Monday. I would be saying, like, you don't need to act this week, like, unless you have to. But with Ceres there, it's like, listen for the inspiration, listen for unusual ideas. And particularly, like, we're all creative beings, but we kind of shut that down. Our culture kind of has an interesting relationship with creativity. But you might notice, like, there's, like, maybe you want to have a sing, maybe you want to dance, maybe you want to go get like some paints and paint. It's that type of energy of like just being inspired and not focused on an outcome, focused on just enjoying the process of creativity. As we head through to the rest of the week, we're going to have Mercury conjunct Chiron, and Chiron has just moved into Aries. I'll put a link to the video about that below. And these two will be sitting in Ashwini Nakshatra until about the 15th of May. Now, Ashwini is all about healing. It's the cosmic healing energy. And so there can be healing around an old wounding to do with how you lead, to do with your independence, to do with your ability to really back yourself and speaking that to other people. We are then, let me see, Parvati will be conjunct Uranus on Thursday. So there's going to be a lot of unexpected energy that comes through next week, particularly with the Libra full moon, which I'll get to. I'll talk about next week. But there's a lot of energy with Uranus, and Uranus brings about unexpected events. Kind of like it can show up as earthquakes, issues with electricity, magnetism, but really it's the great awakener. And so you can find around Thursday that maybe, or even Friday, some event happens, something comes up which really forces you to see how it's all God, how it's all the divine, and almost gets you to really open up your heart to something bigger than yourself. I'll quickly mention the Libra full moon is going to be next week on Monday, Tuesday. It's going to be in Vishaka Nakshatra, incredibly powerful energy, and it marks Buddha Purnima, which is the full moon related to the birth of Buddha. If you want to join, if you want to know what that moon means for you, the ritual and reading is now live. There's details below. You'll get a written reading for the full moon in Libra, really showing like what that means in your chart, what asteroids are at play with it personally for you, and then access to the workshop, which includes a sacred ritual to release with this energy if you feel like you need a bit of an extra help. And then finally, the week after, on the 20th of May, this month's healing circle will be taking place. We'll be working with the Pleiades. The sun will be aligned with the Pleiades. I think there's 14 places. So if you feel like you've got a connection to the Pleiades, or you just want a little bit of like time in sacred space with others, being quiet and kind of being able to tune into what's going on for you, it's a beautiful environment to get that. I'll put details below as well. I hope you have a wonderful week, and may whatever show up for you help you own more of your shadow and find greater completeness in your life.